I'd like to acknowledge Australia's First Nation people as the traditional custodians of the land, and for this episode in particular, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
This sharing brings the community really close and really focused on making people understand why our land is so unique. So it's a great time to be a winemaker.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Sophie Conte is the winemaker of Tregole Estate, located in the Chianti Classico region. She joins me today to tell me about life in Tuscany and working with the fragrant, age-worthy and sophisticated Sangiovese grape. Hi, Sophie. Thanks for joining me.
Hello. I'm super happy to join you and to be here.
Well, thank you for coming all the way over to Australia. I've seen that you've been doing a few beautiful dinners. How have you found your trip to Australia this time?
Lots of fun. I like Australia. I was here 15 years ago, and this time I love it as the first time. So I'm having a great time.
Oh, that's good to hear,
Yes.
considering there's lots of turmoil and it can be sometimes stressful doing a bit of travel when everything else is behind you. But tell me a little bit about your family's history in the region of the Chianti Classico region, because that goes back a very long way.
Yeah. So my parents are both not from Tuscany. They met in Tuscany in the beginning of the 90s. A bit early because I'm 88, so end of the 80s. My mom comes from north of Italy on a German talking part of Italy. It's Südtirol, and my father was from Ischia, that is like it's an island in front of Naples. And they were both in Tuscany for different reasons. My father was studying at university. My mom was living in a farm in Maremma. That's a wild part of Tuscany. And they met. They wanted really to live in the countryside close to Florence. So they both love Chianti. Was a time where a lot of people from other regions of Tuscany were moving into Chianti. And they first moved into Panzano. That's a small town close to Florence. And then me and my brother, born and raised there. And they were doing different jobs. My father was an architect. My mother was a painting restoration. They were doing their jobs, and they were often not at home, also because my father her main business was to work on design and glass vases. And so he was exporting them. My mom was away for her commissions on painting restoration. So they both wanted to find a house where they could also work, so they could stay a bit more close to us. And they started looking for a house in around 1994, if I'm not wrong. And as you can imagine, it was like they were looking for two different things. My mom, with two small kids, wanted to be close to a town. My father wanted to be in the middle of nowhere. They weren't really, they couldn't find the house who was putting together both their needs. And then in the end, they arrived in Tregole in 1998. Because of a friend suggested it, and the friend suggested it by saying that the house was bigger than what they were looking for, but that once they would be there, they'll fall in love with the place and they would not care about anymore how big was the house and how much land was coming with. And so they arrived in Tregole and they loved it. And they was a big farm, but compared to a house, but half was a ruin. So not all of it was livable already. Part of it, there were two apartments that were on rent. The past owners renovated a bit the house to rent it to tourists and so to guests. So that part was livable. I remember the first thing they show us, of course, was the pool. So me and my brother said, yes, we want to live here because there is a big pool. We don't care about the rest.
Definitely.
And then it took them a bit. On the other side, they didn't want to lose it, but they were a bit scared because the house, as most of the houses in Chianti, they come with land. It's hard to get a house with not a land in the countryside, but it was not their interest, no, because they were looking for the house. So the thing that didn't scare them was that the land was on lease, was on rent, and so it in the end was a tiny income, and so they said, okay, we love the place. The land is part of the life of the house. We will embrace all of it, and so in beginning of 1999, they bought the house and they renovated for the first years. We lived more or less in all the part of the house because slowly they were renovating and we were moving. So in the end, they renovated all the house. The land, it's been on lease for a while. On the same time, my parents became good friend with the young winemaker that was having the land on rent. And so they decided my father found this like arrangement that he could keep a bit of grapes to work a bit the grapes and have a bit of wine for the house. So harvest and the process of making wine was really part of the life of the house, let's say like this, not really in a business way, but more on a side face of the entire farm. They worked for 20 years on hospitality in Tregole, and that's been till I arrived and changed everything, of course.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. You can't get too comfortable.
No.
But tell me, you loved the pool, but tell me about how you felt as a child growing up in Tregole. Did you love it? Did you wish it was closer to a city? What was your childhood like there?
So, as I was 10, my only... so I loved the place. My only worry was that all my friends were really far, and that means like 15 minutes with a car away. I was super scared of losing my friends. But then, no, because Tregole is a farm in the middle of a tiny hamlet, like a tiny town. There are around 10 families living there. And when we arrived there, all the kids living in Tregole had more or less our age. So
amazing.
it was that they made it that made it easy to forget about the distance with the other friends. Let's say like this. So we grew really in a group of 6 kids growing in Tregole, and it's been great time. Like we were living our life, sitting on a bike and moving around in the forest around camp during summer in the forest and just swim in the river. Was a great time. We live it till we all went to high school. Then with high school, things a bit change because you have more activities, you want to have more a city life. So things change really with high school, but till high school was great. Yeah. Great memory. You brought me back to a great memory. Thank you.
I'd love to hear it because, I think everybody in the world thinks that anything to do with wine is incredibly romantic. But then when you layer on top of that Tuscany, which is perhaps for most people the most romantic place you could ever make wine, and we all know that it's an incredibly hard lifestyle, but there is some romance there. And I think that knowing that you grew up outdoors, that you enjoyed it, that you were, in a group of children running around enjoying the land, that's so important for fostering the future of how you feel about the land as well. So now tell me, when did you decide when did the wine kind of come into the picture for your family?
So as I mentioned my parents were already doing a bit of wine, for the house, and they were making some bottles for the guests that were sleeping in the house, for the members of the family. And that's been pretty much till not every year, few years, but more or less till 2011. Then my father stopped. He didn't want anymore to. He became sick, and he didn't really want to care about the. He had not the energy to care about the land. We parallel. I studied communication and marketing. My aim was to live in a big city and organize events of sport. So really different future than what I have now. And so my first part of university was on that. Then during my university course, I did a sommelier course. And during the sommelier course, I discover a part of what I already knew by my house life, by my family habit of making wine as part of the life of the house. But I discovered it from a different perspective. And that made me get always more curious, also because I was starting. I met some winemakers that really brought like a spark in me, like I had the feeling, oh, I want to do that job. They have a great life. They have incredible connection with the land where they live. They are focused on what is good for the landscape, how a good product can come out, how to make people love that product, and how to bring out something good that people would enjoy, and that turned out a bit of a light in me. And so that put me a lot of questions once I finished university. And on that point, I decided that the best way to choose was to fly opposite part of the world and come to Australia. And so I did the more common working holiday visa, and I stay here. First part, just waitering and enjoying the life and the lifestyle in Australia. Then I moved to Adelaide. Over there, I start getting a bit more into the wine culture in Australia. And there I said, no, I want to keep my studies in wine business.
Wow, well, I'm so glad we've played a small role in your career path. That's wonderful to hear. Now, you were fairly young at this stage, weren't you? You were in your kind of early 20s, is that right?
Yeah, I was 22, 21, between 21 and 22.
Wow, that is, fairly early for people deciding kind of this is the life for me. I know that myself and many others are still kind of wondering what to do with our lives and going through the process of changing from one degree to another. So I think that, that kind of tells me a little bit about you and your decision-making processes, which is awesome. Now, how did you go about kind of the conversion of grapes in Tregole, and how did that kind of come about where you were actually considering doing it in Chianti?
So when I was here, in Australia, I wanted to do this master that was on marketing and management of wineries. That was the best way to put together my wine interest and my university studies. And so I wanted to do that in Adelaide. It was a bit complicated and super expensive for me. And so I decided to move back to Europe, and I did the same master in marketing and management of wineries. I started working for other wineries, And then the last work I did before Tregole was for a big winery in Chianti Classico. On that time, as I mentioned, my father was not really good. And in 2014, he passed away. And so we had to choose as a family what to do with the land, because he was the one taking care of that part of the life of the house. And I was the only one already in the wine business. So my mom and my brother really genuinely told me, Sophie, you are the only one in the business. You choose what to do with the land. If you want to put it on lease, if you want to sell the grapes, if you want to work, if you want to have your project, it's on you. And that put me on the condition that I was 23, more or less. Yeah. So I was really trying to understand. I thought, for the same reason that I was thinking that I was gonna do the organizer of sport events and living in a big city. I thought, if I work in the wine business, I want to be an employee of a big company, have a stable salary. I don't want to work for myself. I just want to have an easy life, no? But probably that was the gym for my future life. And so then I start asking around how was Tregole, if it was a good spot, if Sangiovese was coming on like it had a uniqueness. That was what I was looking for. Like, if I have to start my project, it has to be unique, or there would be no point of opening a new winery. And so I started asking around, and apparently it was a great spot. So my question came back to me. And also, when I started asking, I was not ready for the answer. No, the answer arrived really fast. And so a lot of people were telling me that was a good spot to start a winery. And because I already had part of the land and I could use part of the rooms of the house as a cellar, something was already there. And so really the person that made everything switch into me going and opening up a business was a friend of my father. He was a winemaker, enologist. And he said, look, Sophie, I think if you don't, because you are in the wine business, if you don't do it, you will regret it, because you're going to develop your knowledge about wine and you will understand at a certain point the potential of this place. And maybe it's going to be late or your life will be in a different direction. I think now would be a great time for you, and I will help you. I will help you because you can imagine not doing University of Enologists. I missed a big technical part, right? So that was my scare. But then he said, I'll help you on that. Don't worry. And so in the end, January 2015, I opened up the business and I started understanding how I could do good wine from Tregole.
Wow. I mean, talk about steep learning slope, having to do it all yourself and learn along the way. This is a hard question to answer in a short time, but tell me a little bit about some of the major learning curves with planting your vineyard and with understanding how Sangiovese grows on your site.
So I think first lesson that I learned was that my boss is the nature, so I have to go with the nature rhythm. And when you're 24, you have a different rhythm. You want everything fast, immediate. That was my character, no? So that's been the biggest lesson, and that made me take a bit of time. My first 4 years in Tregole have really been trying to understand how were the different plots, how was Sangiovese, what was the identity of the Sangiovese in Tregole. And I discovered that Sangiovese in Tregole grows. So Tregole is like a tongue of of earth coming out of a mountain, and it has the shape of a triangle, right? It has like two rivers that start on the sides and they meet together in front of Tregole in a third valley. That's why the name means three gullies, Tregole. And it's a hill facing east, surrounded by forest. It's a place where Sangiovese comes out really with, as you mentioned at the beginning, it's Sangiovese. It's a grape that adapts a lot on the soil, and it's in Tregole. It's really on his more crispy, fresh result. And but because it's a grape that adapts so much, the vineyard go around this hill of Tregole, right? So every exposition has really a different result, but the DNA and the backbone is like acidity, freshness, savory, back taste, and crunchy fruits. Those are the four, let's say, basements that keep the wine, and then over that, every vineyard then has more a spicy part, more a fruity part, more a floral part over that base.
And Sophie, are you working with multiple clones or just a couple of clones?
So I work with, I have vineyards that have around 20 years, and they have clones that are selected from the project Chianti Classico 2000. That's a project started in the end of the 80s in the Consorzio Chianti Classico to find the clone that adapt on their best for altitude, exposition, and soil. And I'm using those clones for all the vineyards that have around 20 years. Then the old plots, I have two old plots, one planted in 1984, that it's for the Riserva, and one planted in 1972 for the Gran Selezione. They are all clones, and are clones that don't exist anymore, but it's a old style clone that makes big bunches and big berries. And I think for how the climate is now, they adapt incredibly good on the climate that we have in this harvest.
Because I was lucky enough to try your 23 Annata, and I immediately thought this will do well here in Australia because this is very clean, pure fruit. And I thought immediately, I know that you, within the DOCG, you need to, have a certain amount of time in bottle and maturity of wine in oak. Your fruit was so pristine and the oak was so fine and well molded into, but the fruit was the star, and the beautiful texture and those bright acidity. I thought, I wonder what her approach is to oak, and how you get such clarity of fruit. It was really quite beautiful.
So I really believe that the cellar work, it's tiny. I really believe that our work, it's 90% in the vineyard. We have really how, as a person that makes suit by hand, right? Is the same. We tailor, thank you. We try to be the same thing with the grapes. So we follow the grape from the time that the gem come out and the flowers and the bunches. We make sure that bunches don't talk one to the other. When we harvest, we make sure that they have the right shadow and sun time to develop a good elastic skin. We arrive on harvest, and also when it's time to pick up, we never pick up all the bunches of the same plant in the same time. We really pick each bunch on his right timing. So that means like 2, in some vintage, 3 harvests on the same plant. And so 2 or 3 tanks of the same vineyard. They all go on their right timing for the bunch. So that means that with the stem, we try to work with full berries. The full berries go in the tank. We try not to break the skins. Once the berries are in the skin, depending on how is how are the berries, we give the time to stay on the liquid, on the wine, on maceration, right? And for the Chianti Classico, like you tasted, that could be 18, 20, 23, 24 days. We don't have a scheme. We really go taste and see how it develops. Really gentle, soft extraction. We do pump overs, but on a really, really gentle way. After we saturate the tank with nitrogen, we leave the skin on the liquid till we have the feeling that the fruit is releasing flavor. Once we feel that that's ended, we separate, we leave it in the tank, we wait that the wine decants, and what it has to go in wood goes in wood, what has to remain in concrete remains in concrete. So we don't really have a recipe. We really follow what we get from the vineyard, trying to make it evolve on his best. I know it's a bit complicated to figure it out how what it means, no? But it's like, I really believe it's like when you want to cook a plate, you find the right pan and the right timing of cooking for each ingredient, and then they make the plate. Really, with the grape is the same thing.
I can see that there is so much thought behind all of your wines, and it's interesting to try your Reserva because it is a completely different beast, and you can see those really kind of gnarly, the strength of those beautiful old vines, but as an offering with your Cicero and then also your Reserva, you can see that there is a place and a time for each of these wines. Whether it will be with different company or with different food or with a different time of the day as well. You can really see where they would all fit depending on your mood as well.
Yeah, totally agree. I think so. The Reserva plot really is a plot that it's the only one that doesn't get the wind coming from the north that we have every day. Summer, winter, any season we have it. In winter is more strong wind. In summer is more like a breeze. But there is always this wind coming from north, and the Reserva plot is the only one that is covered by the farm. So there, as you said, there is more structure. It's like the wine has more layers. Is the one with more juice. Is the one that has more muscles. I say. And the Gran Selezione, it's a really tiny, steep plot, really stony, facing east. A small amount. I only get grapes to do more or less 1,000 maximum bottles.
Wow.
And there, it's the one that needs more time in the cellar. So we keep it 3 years in the cellar, because really, if I will make you taste the tank right after harvest, it's a completely closed. It needs time to open up. And so that's what we do in the cellar, especially with the old vines, is trying to find the right way to make them settle and open and bring out the fruit and put together acidity and fruit. And so that's really the work of the wood that we do with those two plots. And then once we have the feeling that the wine is enough evolved to be understood, we put it in the bottle. So the Gran Selezione probably is the more deep one, the more straight focus, like is a vertical wine compared to the Reserva. This is a more horizontal wine. Or Reserva goes more in your cheek. The Gran Selezione is really deep and has a lot of layers, but being really vertical, tongue, center, mouth. The Gran Selezione has more shoulders, and that's really because of the plot, how the grape evolved there. The work we do in the cellar is really just to help. We try, for how much that is possible, to not impact with our choices on the results of the grapes.
And then you have your beautiful Cicero, which I apologize, I probably butchered that pronunciation. But this falls into, of course, an IGT classification. But I had to look that wine up to look at the price, because it's a sensational wine. And I think I have to say that Sangiovese for me is the grape for this style of wine. And for lots of Aussies out there, it's more of a rosé style for us, or Rosato for you. And for me, it is the grape that performs best in this style. And it is sensational, so textural and so detailed, with lots of layers, with bright fruit. I thought that was a superb wine. And I thought, goodness, I wonder what this pricing would be, because being in the IGT, I thought, I wonder where you put it, but I'm glad to see that it is with a price tag that it absolutely deserves.
Yeah, and really, the game on that, the part that why we choose to do that wine is that we want to have in a bottle the opposite that you have with the Chianti Classico, right? So Chianti Classico, you have maceration time on the skin, so you have a fruit that has the release of the skins. That here is opposite. We want to have the juice with any skin. So some years is more white, some years is more pink. But the idea is that you have what we call it succo fiore. So that means the flower juice. The first juice is like the 10% of the juice that you get from the berry. And the idea is that by working like this, you have the really, how can I say, deepest flavor of what's in the inside of the berry without having any contact with the external part. And for that, we have flavors that with the maceration we lose. And that's what makes great fun for us making it, because we find a new face of the Sangiovese, right? They won't be, it has like flowers, but will be like more yellow flowers that, with the maceration, they become immediately more purple flower, violet, roses, they go more on the hot part. In the Chicchero, they are a bit more white, yellow, or like soft rose parts. And the savory, it's really present. You feel it a lot. The savory, the salty parts and the fresh part. That's the game on that. So if you taste the 24 Chianti Classico and the 24 Chicchero, you have the same juice, but one with the contact skin and one without, right? And that what makes it for us incredibly interesting. And as you said, I also love Sangiovese work like this because it's super vibrant.
Yes, indeed. I mean, we see lots of different styles of these wines made from lots of different grapes, but I immediately know when it's Sangiovese, and I think, oh, I'm going to love this already. But that is a really beautiful wine. I'd like to know about your community, because you did mention that in the area you were, there was about 10 families. Now, obviously, as people have grown up, they've spread apart. But what is the community like in the town that you live? Is there lots of competition between the families and what they're producing? Do you get together and as we would in Australia at a taverna or a local pub, are you friendly with the other families that produce wine?
Yes, we really are in a time where winemakers believe that the connection is what makes a common project evolve. So we are in a time where winemakers want to sit on the same table, drink together, drink wines from other regions, drink their own wines, taste their barrels, taste the barrel of each other, understand how the nature is changing and how our results are changing, how we adapt, what are the way that we find to fight diseases. Now it's compared maybe to, so the old farmers in Tuscany have this, I don't know how to say this. They were known for being people that really didn't want to talk with the winemaker on the opposite hill, right? I don't know how to explain that. But now we are on the opposite time. Now we really believe that that's what it's making at the moment Chianti Classico such an interesting wine area, because wines are evolving a lot. People are really focused on their land, are really focused on the diversity, and diversities between winemakers are considered a huge plus for our land. I really believe that in Chianti Classico you can find a glass for every single palate. And that's because Sangiovese adapts so much on the soil, on the altitude, on the exposition. And so you have incredibly different results. They have all a same line because it's not a really wide area, right? But on the single aspects, you can find a lot of different results. And so now this sharing brings the community really close and really focused on making people understand why our land is so unique. So it's a great time to be a winemaker. And we are in a time where there are a lot of young winemakers. We have an incredibly new generation of kids that now are running wineries, working for wineries, making decisions, and that's making the territory evolve super fast.
I have heard that there has been some big cultural changes with the younger winemakers and in that collaboration of sharing, whether it be secrets or just what they're doing and what they're up to. So that's really good to hear. Now, Sophie, when you're here, I'd like to know, I mean, this has probably got to do with Josh and how good a host he is, but tell me a little bit about what you drink when you're here. Are you seeking out Sangioveses that Australia is making, or are you drinking the complete opposite? What are you gravitating towards when you're here in Australia?
That's a good question. So, when I travel with my wines, I mostly, of course, good part of my work, it's on Italian restaurants or restaurants that have, of course, a wine list that has also Italian wines, right? But really, because of my curiosity, I try to taste. So I'm probably pushing Josh on trying a lot of Australian wines. So he would sometimes have something different. But while I'm here, because for us it's a bit of pity, we don't get many Australian wines. And so while I'm here, I'm trying to use as much time I have and chances I have to try Australian wines. I have to say probably I tasted more whites than reds, but I'm enjoying it. I tasted really nice Shiraz. I tasted nice Grenache. I tasted really nice Rieslings. I tasted some nice Chardonnay. I tasted also some Sangioveses. I have to say the result, it's really different. But yeah, I'm curious about local wines.
Oh, that's good to hear. And what do you think Australia does well in terms of their wine production? Is there something that stands out to you that you could say, wow, Australia has great energy? Or what would be the one thing that if you were to paint the whole brush over all Australian wine, which is very hard to do, I know, but what would be the one thing that stands out for you?
I think for a good part of the I don't want to be get my thought as a person that does not have the same knowledge of her territory with Australian territories, right? But I really believe that many Australian areas are treating white grapes and red grapes in areas that are a bit more hot than what we are used in Europe, but still not losing freshness. Right. So I think the managing of the grapes in Australia, also in the more hot areas, it's really sensible on the grape. So I have to say, for that reason, wines stand out for freshness also in places that are really hot. Then I see that often there is a big use of oak that we are not so used anymore in Europe. So that changes a bit then the process of aging the wine, and then the final result. But on the DNA, we tasted some old wines of Australia that are like 20 years or 15 years, 25 years, and they seem all really young on blind tasting. So that really came out for me. They are wines that can age really good. Because probably the treatment that it's on the grape, it's really accurate. Also, if the weather could be hot. I don't know if I answer you and I made you understand what are my thoughts.
No, you totally did. And then what I appreciate, because I kind of threw that curveball at you, you handled it very well, was that probably most people would know that Australia has a lot of sunshine, and that would be the one thing. But to know that we know that we have a lot of sunshine, but we know how to also handle grapes within that and to get the best out of them, despite the warming kind of climate, is really interesting as a takeaway. So thank you for giving me a little bit of your mind. I think it's always good to know what you take away from this country as well, let alone what you're going to bring to it as well. So, Sophie, I have loved our chat. I'm fascinated. I've never been to Chianti Classico. I am desperate to get there. And now that you've our conversation, I'm even more keen. But I do have one last question, which I ask everyone on this podcast, and that is, if I could buy you, say, 3 drinks today, what would be the 3 drinks that you would drink for the rest of your life?
Ooh, for the rest of my life, that's the question. What would be? So if I have to choose 3 that I will drink all my days till for all my life, right? So I would definitely put in Sangiovese as a red.
Good.
And then as a white, I would probably go for sparkling wine. I love champagne, so I will probably go for a nice fresh champagne. And as a third one, I would probably put in a daiquiri, because there are times that you need something more strong than wine.
that is true in this day and age.
I want to be safe that I have also that,
We do need a stiff drink occasionally. Sophie, it's been a joy getting to know you, to hearing more about your very special place in the world. Thank you very much for spending some time with me, and enjoy the day and a half that you have left in Australia.
Thank you very much. It was really nice talking to you, and I hope that I'll meet you back in Tregole on your visit in Italy and in Tuscany.
I'm crossing all my fingers and toes.
Nice.
Thank you, Sophie.
Good.
Cheers to you.
Ciao. Ciao, ciao.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Stay tuned for more stories from the world of wine and drinks. Listen in every Thursday on your podcast app. Follow us on Instagram at overaglasspod, and contact us at overaglass@deepintheweeds.com.au.